Today we will be looking at the 5 themes of geography. Remember, we have said that geography is a science. So as such, we are going to look at how geographers seek to answer questions about the world in a scientific manner. Over the years, many students have asked, why do we study geography? We do this because it affects where people live, how people live, and it affects the outcome of major events that you're going to study later in world history and U.S. history. As we look at the world more closely this school year, we're going to look at it in terms of these 5 themes of geography. Geographers are going to seek to ask questions and answer them based on these 5 themes. The first one is location. The second is movement. The third is region. Fourth is place. And fifth is human-environment interaction. The first question that geographers ask is, where is it? And that is answered through the first theme of geography called location. When a geographer asks the question, where is it? They have 2 options when they're explaining this type of location. They could answer the question using absolute location, or they can answer the question using relative location. When a geographer chooses to answer the question, where is it, using absolute location, I want you to think about this as having only one answer. That one answer is absolutely where you're located. When you answer that question, you have to use 2 specific line types. That is latitude and longitude. I want you to think about absolute location as your GPS coordinates. Absolute location uses latitude lines. They're also called parallels, and they are drawn from east to west. So I want you to think about your compass. If this is north, this is south, this is going to be west, this is east. So they're going to be drawn in this direction. But they are going to be measuring distance north and south of the equator. So I want you to think about it more like a ladder, rungs on a ladder. These are going to be your latitude lines. In terms of latitude, the most important line of latitude is the equator. And if we're thinking about the Earth as a human being, the equator would be like the belt of the Earth, right in the middle, the center of the Earth. It is going to be measured at 0 degrees. And then again, we talked about lines of latitude measuring north to south. So anything that's happening north of the equator is measuring distance north. Anything south or below the equator is going to be measured in degrees south. The equator splits the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres. If I'm going to define a hemisphere is half of a globe. In our case, it's the Earth, but even if you were a brain surgeon, you measure someone's head in terms of hemispheres. So for us, the equator is going to divide and give us half of the globe, north or south of the equator. Okay, so I previously told you that absolute location is going to use 2 different points, 2 different lines. We've already talked about lines of latitude. The other line was longitude, and longitude is also referred to as a meridian. Longitude lines are going to be drawn differently than lines of latitude. This time, they're going to be drawn from north to south. So they're going to be in this direction. All right, so again, we had our compass. And we're saying that it's going to be drawn from north to south. But they're going to be measuring distance east and west of these lines. So they are more like suspenders. Before we said that the equator was like a belt. Well, these are like your suspenders. The major line of longitude is called the prime meridian. It's going to be found at 0 degrees, and it's going to split the Earth into the eastern and western hemisphere. Okay, so the next thing we need you to do is you're going to go into your blend space. You have a worksheet that is called latitude and longitude. You are now the geographer, and you're going to determine absolute location on that worksheet. All right, so your worksheet looks like this. You have 10 points for which you have to find the absolute location. Remember, we said absolute location, you have to use both latitude and longitude. So I'm going to do the first one with you. Point number 1 is here. And when you are answering absolute location, you first answer its point of latitude. So if we're looking at latitude, we said latitude measures distance north and south of the equator. So it's going to run in this direction, and it's going to be 30 degrees north. So we're going to write 30 degrees north. And then we have to find its longitude. And we said that longitude is going to measure the distance west and east of the prime meridian. So in this case, we see that it's 15 degrees. So it's 15 degrees, and it is west of the prime meridian. So 15 degrees west. So when you're measuring these points, that is how you find the absolute location of each one of the points. Now, your teacher may want you to submit this worksheet in paper form, or she or he may want you to submit it in Schoology. You need to find out the way that your teacher prefers to have that submission, and you need to complete all 10 of these points at this time. If you run into trouble while you're working on these points, please raise your hand and your teacher can work with you in a small group, or you might be able to get some peer assistance as you're working on this activity. The other type of location is called relative location. So remember, we talked about the fact that geographers are answering the question, where is it? And if I want the absolute location, I'm going to answer using GPS type coordinates. I'm going to answer using latitude and longitude. But when your friends are asking you where's your house, you don't give them your GPS coordinates. Yeah, you might give them your address, but most of the time you say things like, I live by HEB, or I live a mile from CTHS or from Dobie. Whatever the case may be, this is how we generally describe our location based on other things around it. So right now you could look at the teacher's desk and try to figure out its relative location. It could be by the door, or next to the windows, or by Bobby's seat. Whatever the case may be, that's relative location. And that is the type of location that we use most often. The next theme of geography answers the question, how are people connected? We answer that question using a theme called movement. Movement is going to describe how people, products, and ideas move from one place to another. Examples of movement can be migration, trade, the exchange of ideas and information. One example you learned last year in U.S. history was the Columbian Exchange, or your teacher may have called it the Triangle of Trade. Those things are examples of movement. Things that can move include goods. We move goods all over the world. If you are buying something on Amazon, you are getting that good moved to you from all over the globe. People can move. Their personal things can move. We move money, and we move ideas. How do things move? Well, you can move it through word of mouth, through forms of transportation, through computers, satellites, telephones. This one requires a lot of technology, and I want you to think about how things moved way back in history versus how things are moving today. That could be transportation or communication. Through movement, we connect all of the world together, and this is called globalization. When we are interdependent on each other for economic things, for our culture, politics, socialization, and technology, this is because we have a more globalized society than ever before. We are no longer isolated because the world is connected through movement. One of the biggest examples of movement and globalization is McDonald's. You can find McDonald's all over the world, and they don't necessarily serve the exact same food everywhere, but McDonald's is a global icon. Other examples, if you're looking at the fact that a lot of things today are made in China. So this political cartoon is making fun of the fact that labor is work, and Labor Day in the United States is different today because we get a lot of our products from China. That's an example of globalization, as is Nike. Nike is a global icon. In case you didn't know what this one is, this is Coca-Cola, also a global icon. And here you see Pizza Hut and KFC. So globalization is something that shows that movement and that connection from one part of the world to the other has become very important in a global society. The next theme of geography is called region. Region answers the question, what does one place have in common with another? Or what makes one place unique? A region is going to describe areas that have something in common. Regions can be big or they can be very small. There are three types of regions that we look at in geography. The first one is called a formal region. We also have a functional region and a perceptual region. A formal region is going to be an area which shares common characteristics, and they are usually physical or human characteristics. An example of these would be North America, Latin America, and Texas. North America shares a common physical space. It's the continent of North America. And you would think about North America in terms of the part of the continent that is north of the equator. It would include countries like the United States, Canada, Mexico, the islands in the Caribbean. All of these are considered North America because they share these physical characteristics. But if I was looking at the country of Mexico and I was thinking about its humans, the people there, they're going to be less like their neighbors to the north and more like their neighbors to the south, which creates a different region called Latin America. So we can look at a formal region in both physical or human characteristics. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later when we get to the theme of place. A functional region is an area that's characterized by a common purpose. Examples of these are cities. The purpose that may connect them is transportation networks. If I look at Dallas Fort Worth, that's what these two cities are right here. They are connected by a common airport, and they're often referred to as one region, a functional region connected by transportation. Another example of that you can see readily in our school district is the fact that we're connected by the common purpose of educating students. That makes us a functional region in Pasadena ISD. The last type of region is called a perceptual region, and these are areas that are characterized by the feelings and attitudes associated with that area. An example would be the southern United States. Another example is the Middle East, or we might call College Station Aggie Land. But I want you to think about this as the feeling or attitude that you get. So, how many of you have ever noticed the fact that people think that everybody from Texas or from the southern United States is a cowboy and, we ride horses to school and that kind of thing, or everybody's wearing a cowboy hat or participating in a rodeo? That's the example of a perceptual region. It's a perception about the South. The Middle East, I want you to think about the perception that you get when I say the words Middle East. You might think of Islam. You might think of terrorism. There are a lot of things that we think of that comes from our feelings and attitudes about the area. And if I talk about Aggieland, we're talking about wearing maroon and saying Gig'em and all those things that we think about that is a part of that region of Texas. The fourth theme of geography is called place, and it answers the question, what's it like? When I'm answering the question, what's it like, I can answer in terms of distinct characteristics in two ways: human characteristics or physical characteristics. And so I want you to look at these two images. This image was made by people. It's not like this image, which was already on Earth before people. So I want you to think of human characteristics over here, like the pyramids, as anything that is man-made or anything that describes people, like language. I want you to think of physical characteristics like this image over here of the Rocky Mountains, things that are created by nature. These characteristics are something that makes a place different from any other place in the world. So it makes the place unique. So physical features include landforms and bodies of water like mountains or rivers. And these features also include wildlife and other natural resources. So place, if I were to say, what's it like? In this picture, I could talk about mountains. Over here, I could talk about valleys. I could talk about forest. Any of that would describe what's it like for this place. In this image, we're looking at very distinct physical features, as we are here as well, and in these images as well. So you're describing physical characteristics. Another way we can describe place is by human characteristics, and these are derived from the ideas and attitudes or actions of people that result in changes to the environment, such as building roads, clothes, food habits. All right, these images are all human characteristics. So if I'm answering what's it like in these images, if I were to start here with this image and these women, I might talk about Islam. That's what it's like there. If I'm looking at Mount Rushmore, I might talk about, presidents and democracy. That's part of human characteristics. Or in this image down here, urbanization and large cities. Those are all human characteristics, and answer what's it like in terms of human ideas. So what's the difference between location and place? We've already talked about both of these themes, and they are two that often get misused. So I want to look at these a little bit more closely. Remember, location is where is it? So in this point, I could answer absolute or relative location. Where is it? So location says where is it? In this case, 5 degrees south, 68 degrees west. Place is what's it like? So in this particular image, I could talk about a swamp, or I could talk about a river, or whatever I wanted to talk about. I'm describing the place. The last theme of geography is called human-environment interaction, and this seeks to answer the question, how do we interact with our environment? Sometimes we refer to this theme as HEI, so we kind of give it a little acronym. Human environment interaction explains how people use and change the environment. Changes to the environment can be both good, bad, or both. And so I want you to think about how we use the environment to provide us with all the things that we need, but we also abuse the environment by polluting and littering and that kind of thing. So examples of human environment interaction. This is Hoover Dam, And this is an example of how humans have taken the environment, the river, and we've stopped the flow of the river in order to provide for some other things that we need, like hydroelectricity. Air conditioning is a form of human environment interaction. It allows us to live in the south, in the hotter parts of the world that are closer to the equator. We use the environment to provide us with natural resources. And then you can see a problem of both littering and air pollution in the background. These are ways that we use the environment for positive and negative things. All right, so when we get ready to remember the 5 themes of geography, we often tell students to use the term Mr. Help. Mr. Help stands for, you have an M for movement, the R is region, HE is human environment, interaction, and the L is location, and the P is place. So if you're having trouble remembering what the 5 themes of geography are, I want you to think about Mr. Help. Okay, so back to Blend Space. On Blend Space, you have a worksheet that asks you to take the geographic term and to put it with the correct theme of geography. So I'm going to do this first one with you. Equator. If I had to pick which of these themes of geography the equator should go with, I would probably put it with location. Because remember, with absolute and even relative location, you're looking sometimes at the relationship between the equator and where a point on Earth is. You're going to do the rest of these on your own, or if your teacher allows, in a small group, or maybe with a partner. You need to find the directions that your teacher has for you and complete this activity on your own.